Okay, so hopefully you filled in a few of those, or a couple at least. But I'm going to start us off. You'll have to bear with me because I can't write very well using my touchpad, but we'll see what I can do. All right, I think the easiest one right off the bat is coming out of the ocean here. And the reason that they put it over the ocean is because this is the greatest place over the ocean, is the greatest area of evaporation. And since I can't write very fast this way, I'm just going to use an abbreviation. Evaporation. So evaporation is water turning to gas and rising into the atmosphere. So we have the water rising off the oceans. Now the oceans contain most of the water. That's where most of the evaporation on Earth happens, is over the oceans. And then it goes up into the air. And as it gets up into the air, these gases come in contact with little dust particles or pollution or something solid in the atmosphere that it condenses on. The same way that water will condense on the outside of a cold glass, or the same way that water condenses and makes droplets on your windows of your car. It's the same idea. As soon as it gets in the right pressure and the right temperature and it comes in contact with something solid, it will condense into a water droplet. And when it does that, we call that condensation. So that one's a pretty easy one too, when it condenses into water droplets because it touches something solid in the atmosphere. Oops, I forgot an N. D-E-N. Anyway, so we're just going to leave that abbreviation. Condensation. You guys can figure that one out. Actually, it's spelled at the bottom of your page. Okay, and that's over here too. So condensation is reaching the clouds. So now we've had the water has evaporated. Oops, not G, D, E, N. All right, so there's our condensation. So it leaves the ocean, touches something solid, turns into water droplets, right? This is all elementary. Then once it turns into water droplets and gets heavy enough, what happens? It turns into precipitation. Precipitation can be in what forms? Rain, sleet, snow, anything in between. Okay, so precipitation. So far, pretty easy. And even this one right here, you probably know more than you realize you do. So once the water reaches the land, it has to work its way. Eventually, it all works its way to the ocean again, or to the groundwater. So water moving across the surface of the land is what we call runoff. Now, we tend to, especially in the agricultural area, think of runoff as a bad thing. That runoff is always water running where it shouldn't and taking nutrients with it. That isn't always the case. Sometimes runoff is just part of nature, where you've got like in this picture, you've got the water reaching the top of the mountain. Well, obviously the water isn't going to stay there unless it freezes, so it has to go somewhere. So it creates little rivers and ravines and creeks that go down the mountainside, and eventually it all finds its way back to the ocean, and that's considered runoff. So then it finds its way back to the ocean, and this ocean is where we store a lot of water. It's where accumulation of water happens. So it would be a reservoir. Remember I told you that that was going to be a word that we're going to hear a lot with these cycles, is reservoir. So the ocean is the biggest reservoir for water. Another easy one to figure out, right? So then over here we've got trees. Now this one is probably new to you. I'm not sure if you realize this, but even plants evaporate water. So plants have little tiny holes in their leaves, and water will evaporate out of those leaves, and we have a special name for that. Just like when we have water coming out of our pores, we call it sweat. Well, plants don't sweat, but they transpire. So this is transpiration. Transpiration is when water evaporates out of plants. Again, I'm just going to abbreviate it. The whole word is spelled at the bottom for you so you can fill it in with the right spelling. And then down at the bottom, when the water doesn't run into the ocean, what will happen is it trickles into the land. And underneath the water, or underneath the land, is sometimes pockets of water, sometimes bigger than most lakes that we see in Minnesota. In fact, there's a huge one. It's called an aquifer, before I tell the story. An aquifer is a reservoir of water underneath the land. And there's a giant aquifer down in our southwest, underneath our southwest states. And when they first found that aquifer, they drilled down, and all that water underneath in the aquifers is very, very clean. And so we call it fresh water, right? It's not salt water like the ocean. It's fresh water. We can drink it. We can use it. And when they first tapped into it, they thought, we were never, ever, ever going to use all of this water. There is so much water in this aquifer. It goes underneath like 4 or 5 states in the southwestern area of the United States. And they said, we're never going to use this. We can use this to our heart's delight, And now, when you take a look at it, this is maybe 20 years later. They said forever. Now we're looking at about 20 years later, and we're really running low on that aquifer. We've really devastated that aquifer just in 20 years. So you can imagine how hard we are on some of the other smaller aquifers in our area. There's another smaller one right around the South Dakota, Nebraska area too also. Anyway, so these little pockets of fresh water under the ground are aquifers. So now we've got all the vocab for our water cycle. And then down at the bottom, I would like I'm going to go through these rather quickly actually so that I can save video time, but you just need to pause them after each word. Okay, so let's start with evaporation. Let's give it a definition. We looked at it on our concept map. Now it is water turning to gas in the atmosphere. All right, that one's pretty easy. So water turning into gas. Okay, we got that. Condensation is water turning from gas to droplets or to liquid. You could put it either way. Precipitation is water returning to the earth. Transpiration is water evaporating from plants. Runoff, water making its way back to the ocean. Let me scoot down a little bit and we'll get to aquifer. Aquifer is underground freshwater supply. All right, so that's all we have for the video part. Now I'm going to play you, now you will play a movie or a video. It's going to talk a lot about facts and how we are affected by water and mainly how we affect water. And I want you to start thinking about some ways that maybe you in your life can change the way you use water to conserve it more or to keep it cleaner. Maybe someday when you're buying a house, are you willing to do some of the changes that they bring up in this film? Would you be willing to try some of the things that they talk about? Or maybe some of you someday are going to be a mayor or run for city council somewhere. And maybe you're going to have some say on how your community uses the water or how we conserve water or clean water. So these are some things that maybe right now, some of it affects you right now, but keep your ears and eyes open because you guys might play more of a part in making those decisions for us as a community as we get older than you think you might right now. So keep your mind open to those things. All right. Have a good day.